By January, I would say at the latest, I would change then my approach to the revision. I would keep the same time slots, but now we're going to move from that knowledge base or creating that foundation knowledge onto targeting the individual skills as we move towards the exam. So I would now be thinking and checking that I know what I mean now by these, by the key skills, the core skills. So that would be reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And I would add to that vocabulary boosting. So that's how we're now going to target our revision from January onwards. As I've already said, you can use the same time slots. If you have the energy or the time, of course, squeeze in another one as you move towards the exam. But if you've been keeping up with this alphabet-based approach up until now, then I would suggest that you'll have a strong core knowledge. Okay, so this will be the point. This is the point when we'll hear lots of talk about revision. You'll be offered all sorts of guides. You'll be offered websites, many that you have to pay for. You'll be offered apps, etc. What I'm going to try and do at this point is narrow everything down for you. I believe that the approach here is that we use a small amount of resources with this little and often approach. The danger at this point would be to get distracted with all the different resources that will be on offer to you, no doubt, at this point, whether it be advertising in school, on the TV, it'll just be everywhere. Okay, so my recommendation would be that you use Caboodle, which I'm going to show you, but you'll probably be familiar with that from lessons. You should have your own password. If not, there's a quick one to get you started in here, a temporary one, but just ask in school if you haven't got your login details for Caboodle, because from this January point onwards, this will be essential. You will, of course, still be able to go back to your alphabet recall to keep that ticking over. You might just add to it something like a free vocab app like Memrise or something like that. But honestly, you could pretty much just have these booklets and Caboodle from this point onwards. If we begin on speaking, I would suggest that you base all of your speaking revision around the purple GCSE booklets that you will get in school. So you're probably familiar with this as I hold it up to the camera anyway. Now, this booklet contains all of the questions that you may be asked for the general conversation part of the speaking exam. Now, that is the vast majority of your marks, so certainly the thing that I will be talking most about. There are actually 3 parts to the speaking exam, but it's very much the general conversation where you get your big scores from. Okay, first thing to say about this is, and this purple booklet, there's no need to be fazed by all the questions that are in there. In fact, the first job on the speaking revision routine is to narrow all of that down, okay? So there are lots of questions to provide some breadth to the conversation, but actually there are 20, I won't say only, but there are 20 mini topics which you'll be familiar with and you will have seen before. It's actually where you started back in year 7. We've been building these mini topics up throughout. So they are, for example, family, technology, free time. They're your units of work that you've been doing throughout. There are 20 of them. So in actual fact, we can now break down your speaking revision into these 20 chunks. Keep an eye on the questions, but you can definitely approach it in this way. Okay, so once you've established and gotten your head around the 20 mini topics, what we need to look at is a general approach that will work for all of them, okay? Okay, so using the background knowledge that you were building up pre-Christmas on this huge sort of bank of sentences that you've now got, choose your most appropriate two to answer the question. So, for example, if you're asked typical activities that you do with your family, just pick out a couple of the sentences that you've been practicing, and that will begin to form your answer. Okay, so 2 sentences to answer the initial question should be absolutely fine, because of course we know now that you're going to extend that out with opinions and a connective after that, the things that you were practicing on the verb alphabet, as I call it, pre-January, before Christmas. Okay, so what you're looking for then on each of these 20 mini topics is a 5, maybe maximum 6 sentence answer. That's all you're going to need. So you're just going to pick from the sentences in the verb alphabet that best fit for this topic, and then you're going to add opinions and add the connective word as you did before. Basically, you're just going to put into practice what you were revising before Christmas. With the speaking, it's just going to be recalling it quickly. It's going to practice recalling it quickly as you need it for that question. But as long as you started at this stage, you'll have chance to sort of speed that up and get more fluent with that. Now, time yourself as well as you're practicing these answers on these 20 mini topics, these like mini speeches if you like. You're aiming for 15 to 20 seconds on each one. You wouldn't need longer than that. And if possible, if you remember those high scoring phrases, and maybe a change of tense, those extra little bits that are mentioned in the booklet that you could add on, now would be the time to practice getting those into your 5 or 6 sentences. Okay, so to conclude, for the general conversation questions for this, don't be daunted by it. Narrow it down to 20 mini speeches of 15 to 20 seconds, or, just to give you a rough idea of the pace of this, 5 or 6 sentences based on those sentences that you were forming there before Christmas, and really to push up the grade scale. If you're now feeling confident enough to do that and wondering how to do, that would be putting in your high scoring phrases and your changes of tense into these 5 or 6 sentences. Now, I did mention there are 3 parts to the speaking exam, but again, to point out, the general conversation, this purple booklet thing, is very much the majority of it. So that's where you put your weight of time into. But nonetheless, there are 2 other parts, okay? So firstly, there's a photo card. So a further part of the speaking exam, you have to describe a photo, okay? So that's just for a couple of minutes or so, 2.5 minutes. So it's a much smaller task, hence why there aren't so many marks for that. Again, I would suggest a routine approach to your revision for that. So just how you're going to have a routine way of practicing, building up to these 5 sentences for your general conversation, you're going to develop a routine way of approaching the photo cards. And you're going to practice with different photo cards. You can get those from your teacher or directly, from the AQA website. Each photo can be described in the same way. So you can just get used to using the same phrases to describe these photos, with the odd word obviously changing on the end. So you're going to have to practice saying things like what you can see, what the people are doing, maybe something like what they're wearing, what's in the foreground of the photo, and then what's in the background of the photo. Okay? And those 5 things are going to get you through a general photo description. You can get these phrases from your teacher. Again, they're already in the booklet. And you just need to repeat those and practice doing them with different photos. Now, you will have extra questions about the photo, but there's no extra work to be done there, because those questions will be the same ones that you had in the general conversation booklet. So when you can practice describing a photo, then looking at those extra questions and just going back to these answers that you've already practiced by now anyway. Okay, so that's the photo card. It goes a general description of the photo and then some talking on the topic that the photo is based on, which will be the same as the general conversation, the purple booklet. Okay, and then finally role plays. Now, role plays, again, a repetitive approach I would recommend. So what you're going to be doing now is these 3 by 30-minute slots. You're going to be rotating around the different skills. But with speaking, you're going to be checking that, yes, you're going to spend the majority of your time with the purple booklet, but you're also going to have some little sessions, some 30-minute sessions with photo description and with role plays. Now, with role plays, what will happen with those is you need to collect a bank of those. Again, you can get them directly from the AQA website, or you can speak to your teacher in school about them. You get a bank of role plays and you just simply practice working through 10, for example, repeatedly. And what will happen with that is the first 1 or 2 will feel quite tricky because they'll feel quite newish. But then you will see that the questions that you're asked on the role play, for example, asking where something is, asking how to get to somewhere, etc., typical sort of day-to-day role play situations, they're very, very much repeated across the different role play cards. So what I would say is battle through your first couple of sessions where it might feel a bit tricky, but then notice as things become easier and easier and easier, and as you practice the different role plays and find the same questions cropping up again and again and again. So, to conclude for speaking, purple booklet, repetitive approach to answering those 20 topic areas. Photo card speaking. Have 5 or so sentences that you could use to describe any photo, and then watch how the questions switch back to what you've already been revising anyway, so nothing else to do there apart from try and fit them into the photo description. And then finally the role play. Now the role play I find are very much of a muchness, so just get 10 or so, practice going over them. You might get stuck on the odd word, I'd be surprised, but if you do, just double check that. And then repeat and repeat and repeat, do 10 or so in a session, and you'll find that they become repetitive and easier as you go. Okay, so that was your speaking. Now, moving on to writing. Now, a lot of those approaches can be replicated for writing, except instead of just saying these things, either to yourself or to somebody else, you're going to write these things down, okay? So, for example, when I was talking about, sorry, just move that on the slide there. When I was talking about the 20 mini topics and having a repetitive way of answering these questions, checking that you've got your sentences in, with your opinions, with your reasons, with your extra connective, not forgetting to add the odd high-scoring phrase and a change of tense. That same repetitive approach that you've been practicing, you can just replicate in your writing. The only difference is checking your spellings and the accuracy of that along the way. Now, the way I would do that is to, as much as possible, refer back to marked work in your exercise book, because then the spellings and things have been checked for you already. If that's proving tricky and there are certain things you can't find in your exercise book, then I would do some practice writing and I would ask your class teacher to mark it for you. The only thing you're doing here differently to your speaking is checking that your writing accuracy, your spelling. Otherwise, you can follow exactly the same process. And then just one thing to point out. In the foundation writing, there is a photo card to describe, so you could actually replicate that with the photo description. However, not in the higher, so just start to, at this point, be aware which level you're going to be entering for, speak to your teacher about that. The role play cards that featured in the speaking, you wouldn't copy that practice over, they don't appear in the writing. So just to conclude, for the writing, you're repeating this purple booklet practice over again. You're checking whether you're foundation or higher level now at this point. I'll explain how we could differ a little bit there. So with the foundation, you would then also practice the photo card description. And then it's probably obvious, but then with the higher, what you would look to do with the extra time you're not spending on the photo card when you're practicing higher writing, you'd be looking to add more higher scoring phrases, and you'd be looking to move out to 10, 12 sentences on a topic, while people aiming for the foundation would be working on the photo card description instead. Okay, so that's your writing, and we're now going to move on to how you would do your reading revision after Christmas. So,